and welcome to this Thursday edition of the World Report, viewers. I'm Arjun, Samar, Mahendran. Let's take a look at what's making headlines around the world. US President Donald Trump has condemned the Washington shooting incident as a heinous assault or an act of evil, an act of hatred, and an act of terrorism. Trump attacked Joe Biden also during the public address, saying that the US must re-examine every single alien who's entered the country from Afghanistan under the former president. Now, in a big move, the US has also stopped the processing of all immigration requests altogether of Afghan nationals after the two National Guard personnel were shot near the White House, just steps away from the White House in capital Washington, D.C. Now, two West Virginia National Guard members were shot by an Afghan national about only 2 blocks away from the White House. Officials, meanwhile, are saying that the victims were hospitalized in a critical condition. Washington's mayor, meanwhile, has said that they were victims of a targeted shooting. Meanwhile, emergency crews have rushed to the two guard members and the suspect, who was also shot, to a hospital. My colleague Priyanka Deo gets us the latest, but first, let's listen in to what President Donald Trump, in fact, said.
Earlier today, on the eve of the Thanksgiving holiday, 2 members of the National Guard serving in Washington, D.C., were shot at point-blank range in a monstrous ambush-style attack just steps away from the White House. They had been deputized as part of the most successful public safety and national security mission in the history of our nation's capital, the D.C. Safe and Beautiful Task Force, which has achieved an unprecedented reduction in violent crime and crimes of all type. This heinous assault was an act of evil, an act of hatred, and an act of terror. It was a crime against our entire nation. It was a crime against... I am determined to ensure that the animal who perpetrated this atrocity pays the steepest possible price. I can report tonight that based on the best available information, the Department of Homeland Security is confident that the suspect in custody is a foreigner who entered our country from Afghanistan, a hellhole on earth. He was flown in by the Biden administration in September 2021 on those infamous flights that everybody was talking about. Nobody knew who was coming in. Nobody knew anything about it. His status was extended under legislation signed by President Biden.
In Washington, D.C., the question of national security is no longer theoretical here, just steps from the White House, just about 2 blocks. One of the most fortified zones on the planet. 2 National Guard members were ambushed and critically shot. And the man authorities have identified is 29-year-old Ramanullah Lakhanwal, who is an Afghan national who reportedly entered the United States of America during the last administration, the Biden administration's 2021 Afghanistan evacuation. This evacuation was one of the largest and fastest airlifts in modern American history. Nearly 80,000 Afghans were brought in within weeks as Kabul collapsed. But even at that time, U.S. officials quietly warned that the vetting process was rushed, it was incomplete, and in many cases impossible because Afghanistan's government had disintegrated. Civil registries had vanished, fingerprint and ID databases were inaccessible. But despite this, the administration relied on humanitarian parole, which is a mechanism that bypasses the full refugee screening process. Now, later, Inspector General reports have confirmed what insiders had feared, that biometric checks were abbreviated, documentation was inconsistent or missing altogether, and thousands were admitted before background reviews were finished. But the most significant failure here wasn't just at the entry, it was after the entry of these people. Evacuees were supposed to undergo follow-up interviews, secondary vetting, and identity verification. In reality, the system was overwhelmed. Many cases were never completed and files remained open. So red flags were missed.
Now, viewers, as my colleague Priyanka there was just pointing out there, 29-year-old shooter Ramanullah Lakhanwal was also an evacuee brought to the U.S. during the hushed 2021 Afghanistan withdrawals. Now, this next report we have for you tells you how Lakhanwal exactly got to D.C. and how the 2 National Guard soldiers ended up fighting for their lives. Take a look.
Well, now we're up on TVU.
Yes, I do. You guys got me?
Washington rattled. The bright afternoon turned violent in seconds. Near Farragut Square, just steps away from the White House, two National Guardsmen ambushed, gunned down in what investigators are now calling a possible terror attack.
This heinous assault was an act of evil, an act of hatred, and an act of terror.
Cops say the alleged gunman, Rahmanullah Lakhanwal, waited in silence. And then, a sudden burst of shots echoing off the concrete jungle of downtown DC. Witnesses froze, troops ran, and two soldiers collapsed. One hit in the chest, then the head. The second struck moments later before a third guard charged in, taking the shooter down.
Yeah, it just was a terrible situation to see. It was a little bit surreal at first, then I started realizing it myself and some other people there, adrenaline was pretty much running pretty quick. Because the second round of shots, made it very obvious. It's going on.
Lakhanwal arrived in the US in 2021 under Operation Allies Welcome. It was an emergency evacuation that brought tens of thousands of Afghans fleeing Taliban takeover. He later resettled in Washington state. Officials say he overstayed his visa but remained in the country. He was granted asylum status only earlier this year. The FBI is treating this as a potential act of terror. Meanwhile, the shooting has ignited a political firestorm within hours. The White House has rushed to reinforce security as 500 additional guard troops were ordered into the capital. But many questions about the vetting of evacuees brought into the US during the chaotic end of America's longest war remain unanswered. Why this suspect was in America, how did he slip through, and whether this attack could have been prevented altogether. For now, Washington waits. It's a city on edge, and a nation demands answers. Arjun, Samar, Mahendran for NDTV World. We shift our focus to Asia, where Hong Kong's deadliest fire in years together, viewers, burned through the evening, leaving at least 55 people dead and another at least 279 reported missing. With rescuers are still pulling residents from blazing high-rise apartment buildings into Thursday morning. Now, several local media outlets have also reported that the police had arrested 3 men on suspicion of manslaughter in connection with the fire, which began Wednesday afternoon in a housing complex in the Tai Po district. It's a suburb in the New Territories area of Hong Kong. Now, by Thursday morning local time, the fire was yet to be put out and the rescues, needless to say, viewers, continued. Meanwhile, hundreds of residents were evacuated as the fire spread through 7 of the 8 buildings in the complex. We get you some reactions.
This is the worst fire to hit Hong Kong in many years. It's a real shock to people here with this gigantic set of apartment blocks in a suburb of Hong Kong on fire. And firefighters, we can see here the dozens of trucks, and as well as other emergency services, all gathered around here in this suburb, Tai Po. They still haven't been able to put out the blaze which is burning on inside these apartment blocks. And we don't know yet how many people have been affected by it, how many casualties there might be. There's not yet a full toll. And also how many people have lost their homes. They won't have homes to go back to. So at the moment, this is still an ongoing terrible situation for Hong Kong, which is a real shock for this place where normally life goes on in a very stable and organized way. So this kind of gigantic outbreak of fire, we don't know the reasons yet, we don't know the results yet, but it's a big, big shock for Hong Kong.
As you can see behind me, this operation is still continuing. I can smell the smoke in the air, and you can see that there are fires still burning in at least 3 of these housing blocks. Firefighters using water jets to bring this fire under control, although there are reports that some buildings have now been brought under control. Now, in a briefing, the Fire Services Department said the temperature inside some of the buildings was still very high, and so it was difficult to get to the top level of these buildings, and so they do expect this operation to continue for some hours. Now, this fire started yesterday afternoon. Fire services said they got here within 5 minutes, but it had spread very quickly. Now, this is a housing estate. It's made up of 8 blocks. And it was undergoing renovation, and so there was bamboo scaffolding as well as a green mesh covering the outside of these buildings. And according to reports, that the fire spread very quickly across that bamboo scaffolding. Now, authorities are working to bring this fire under control. They are also conducting a preliminary investigation.
We now shift our focus to Pakistan, where amid rumors claiming former Prime Minister Imran Khan died in jail, his 3 sisters have claimed that they were brutally assaulted by police for demanding a meeting with the jail leader. Khan's sisters Noreen Khan, Alima Khan and Uzma Khan have in fact claimed that cops also assaulted them along with numerous Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf or PTI supporters. Now, this happened when they allegedly gathered outside Rawalpindi's Adiala jail earlier this week, demanding that authorities allow them to meet the former PM. Here's a report.
A night of chaos outside Pakistan's Adiala jail, where former Prime Minister Imran Khan has been held for the past 2 years. Thousands of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf supporters erupted in violent protest, convinced that Imran Khan had died in custody. The unrest unfolded under the shadow of Pakistan's powerful army chief Asim Munir, with many protesters openly accusing the field marshal of keeping the former prime minister in isolation. Khan's sisters Noreen Niazi, Alima and Uzma were at the scene after being denied yet another meeting with him. They say they've not been allowed to see Khan for over a year, despite multiple Islamabad High Court orders granting twice weekly visitation. The protest, initially a peaceful sit-in, turned tense before finally dispersing on the request of MWM leader Allama Raja Nasir. Khan's family has also accused Punjab police of switching off street lights and launching an unprovoked assault on protesters last week. Concerns continue to grow over Khan's health and reports of solitary confinement. Along with fake reports of Imran Khan's death in custody, there have also been reports that he had been put in solitary confinement. Pakistan authorities have not confirmed any of the rumors surrounding Imran Khan's condition. With tensions mounting, both Khan's family and the PTI continue to demand access and clarity on the former Prime Minister's condition. Bureau report for NDTV.
Russia said on Wednesday that its armed forces attacked Ukrainian energy and transport facilities, while Ukraine, on the other hand, reported strikes against a Russian plant that manufactures components for missiles on the same day. Now, the Russian Defense Ministry said in its latest report that over the past 24 hours, the Russian forces conducted precision strikes against Ukrainian energy facilities, transport infrastructure, and ammunition plants in 143 locations. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drones struck a command post of Russia's 58th Combined Arms in Valsika in the Zaporizhzhia region, targeted a Tor M1 surface-to-air missile system in Mariupol, and also attacked a Russian troop assembly point in the Pokrovsk direction, according to the Ukrainian side. Dominican Republic President Luis Abinader announced Wednesday that he had authorized the U.S. government to operate inside restricted areas in the Caribbean country to help in its fight against drug trafficking. Now, for a limited time, it may be so. The U.S. can refuel aircraft and also transport equipment and technical personnel at the restricted areas within the San Isidro Air Base and the Las Americas International Airport, said Abinader. Now, he also made an announcement with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth at his side. Meanwhile, Hegseth traveled to Santo Domingo to meet on Wednesday with the country's top leaders, including Abinader and Minister of Defense, General Carlos Antonio Fernandez Onofre.
What is a temporary deployment of U.S. service members and aircraft conducting Operation Southern Spear. Small footprint, temporary, fully respecting your sovereignty and your laws and all the dynamics here in the Dominican Republic. It's a great partnership that we're, and truly a joint effort between our two countries against narco trafficking and narco terrorism.
It was the 9th anniversary of the signing of the historic peace agreement between the Colombian state and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, or the FARC, was celebrated at an event in Bogota on Wednesday. Now, this was done with renewed vows by all parties to, in fact, continue the peace. More than 11,000 former FARC combatants continue their reintegration process into civilian life till now, in fact, which the United Nations has deemed a success. However, there are hiccups. Some were taking up arms again and joined together in groups that now number insurgents in thousands. Meanwhile, President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, who was a staunch supporter of the agreement, is set to leave the presidency in August next year. We get you more.
Y son enormes las expectativas con relación al tipo de concepción que asuma el próximo año la dirección del país. Por eso resulta de enorme importancia que en estos meses que vienen se sienten sólidas bases para que el acuerdo, sus propósitos, sus acciones en curso no puedan truncarse por cuenta de una decisión política adversa a su implementación.
A shark killed a woman and seriously wounded another man taking a morning swim together at a national park beach on Australia's east coast Thursday. Experts say a shark rarely attacks more than one person. Now, the attack occurred at Crowdy Bay National Park, which is also known for beach camping, fishing sports and hiking 360 kilometers north of Sydney. Police Chief Inspector Timothy Bailey, meanwhile, told local media that emergency services were called to the beach after reports that two people in their mid-20s here had been bit by a shark at 6:30 a.m. local time. However, he declined to detail the injuries or the circumstances of this attack. Listen in.
Sadly, a woman has been killed this morning by a shark at Crowdy Bay on the mid-north coast. About 6:30 a.m, emergency services were called to a beach at Crowdy Bay. Upon arrival, a lady was providing, a witness was providing assistance to two people who had been bitten by a shark, a man and a woman. New South Wales ambulance attended the scene, but sadly the woman passed away at the scene. At this stage, the woman is believed to be aged in her mid-20s. Formal identification has not yet occurred. The man also aged in his mid-20s. He suffered serious injuries. He was airlifted to John Hunter Hospital and he is in a critical condition.
Thousands took to the streets of Bulgaria's capital, Sofia, on Wednesday to denounce steep tax hikes in the next year's draft budget before its final vote in the country's parliament. The opposition coalition We Continue to Change Democratic Bulgaria organized the rally, which drew an estimated 20,000 protesters, as you see there on your screens. The streets lined up and filled with those protesting. Now, this protest, viewers, comes as the Balkan country prepares to join the Eurozone at the beginning of next year. The protest reflects widespread concern over the budget's economic impact on individuals and businesses alike, including the increase in social security contributions and also the doubling of the dividend tax. We get some protesters for you.
За този фундаментален бюджет, който се опитват да ударят голяма част от работещите българи, средната класа и така нататък. Това е недопустимо. Просто те си хранят силовите структури и просто цялата администрация, която плаче за едно реформиране, просто фундаментално реформиране. Това е към 500-600 хиляди човека, гарантирани избиратели. Това е сериозна реформа трябва да.
Ecuadorian President Daniel Noboa on Wednesday swore in a new military command at a ceremony in the capital, Quito. Speaking at the ceremony to change command of the Joint Command of the Armed Forces, the Army, Navy and the Air Force, the tri-services in the capital, Quito, the President said Ecuador needs leaders who will act firmly against terrorism and drug trafficking. For perspective, it was the Conservative leader's first public appearance since his defeat in the November 16 referendum, when Ecuadorians rejected his proposals to allow foreign bases on the country's soil, establish a constituent assembly to reform the constitution, eliminate state funding for political parties, and reduce the number of assembly members from 151 to just 73. And with that, it's time we step into a short break, viewers. Much more lined up on the other side. Needless to say, don't you go anywhere. Welcome back, viewers. Rio de Janeiro police officers and soccer fans clashed Wednesday near the city's international airport. Now this as a Flamengo squad prepared to travel to Peru to face the Palmeiras in an old Brazilian final. Now as the fervor reached its peak, the atmosphere became chaotic. In their eagerness to show support, dozens of fans in fact entered the Flamengo bus from the ceiling as thousands cheered outside. Meanwhile, some fans also broke through the police security barrier. The situation quickly escalated, leading to a tense confrontation in which fans attacked the police by throwing all kinds of objects they had in hand, while officers used tear gas to regain control. It took the police over an hour to disperse the fans who complained about the authorities' lack of response, arguing that it should have been preventive and serve the event rather than be repressive. After US President Donald Trump's reported intervention, Paramount Pictures is set to redistribute Brett Ratner's Rush Hour 4, a project that Hollywood had eschewed after earlier sexual misconduct allegations against the director. Paramount Pictures on Tuesday was in closing talks to distribute the film, according to a person close to negotiations who requested anonymity because they weren't authorized to announce a deal. Meanwhile, Paramount would be stepping in to take a distribution fee on the film, not financing it entirely. In 2017, during the Me Too movement, 6 women, in fact, said Ratner sexually harassed them in a Los Angeles Times reports. Warner Bros., which had a $450 million co-financing deal with his production company, also severed ties with Ratner. Now, Ratner, who's denied the allegations, hasn't in fact produced a film this entire decade. The Olympic flame for the 2026 Milan Cortina Winter Olympics was lit on Wednesday in a ceremony at the historic site of ancient Olympia, marking the start of its journey to Italy. Now, due to adverse weather, this year's lighting ceremony was held inside the Archaeological Museum adjacent to the ancient stadium where athletes once competed. And well, that's all we have for you this Thursday on the World Report. Take care and have a wonderful day.